Warm greetings and warm welcome to our session on virtual classrooms in education. This is under the Artificial Intelligence in Education. I, Dr. Rennie Francis, Principal of MESS Pillai College of Education and Research, take this opportunity in taking up this session on virtual classrooms. Over the years, we have heard about the way the classrooms have been moving and the way the classrooms have taken a different change or a phase in our regular scenario. And with this change, it is important that we start looking up at things which will really make our classroom more dynamic. In this session, we are trying to focus on our content, which is on what is a virtual classroom, the types of virtual classroom, importance of a virtual classroom, and how your virtual classroom should look like. So, without any delay, we move on to this session on virtual classrooms in education. What is a virtual classroom? We have heard about the word virtual and a classroom. We have always witnessed classroom as a hub of learning endeavors, as a hub of learning practices, as a hub of learning spaces where the child is given the utmost importance to see how the learning can be expanded to all the children in the classroom, as well as to taking in a lot of advantage for the child to imply to conduct the learning in the real life scenario. Now, with this concept of learning, where classrooms were considered to be in the four walls of any school, uh, it has now beyond taken a step of moving beyond the boundaries of the school, and now learning has instead come on either on our fingertips or also in our hand. We have the mobile learning devices, we have the other technological devices which help us in learning. So learning is literally now come to each one very close to the learner. And virtual classroom is one area that we are speaking about today so that we can understand with this kind of a scenario how virtual classrooms can help in the learning stations or the learning spaces. So virtual classrooms are a more popular solution with the onset of COVID-19 abruptly and all of us being indoors. No way that we could move out to the open space or to the classroom or the schools. We in fact we literally felt that was a limit that we could have our learning to be expanded. And to a large extent, our learnings were thought to be taking a backseat, but thanks to the online portal or online medium, we could reach out to the class, to the students, to the classrooms, and we could move back our learning on its full gear. So when we are speaking about that particular situation, here is the situation where we speak about virtual classrooms to be a popular solution to most of the distance learning problems that we are facing. So many a times we feel the learning is not intact or the learning is not personalized. It is a personalized and it becomes remote where it takes the learner to not necessarily to the classroom physically, but the technological advances has helped the learner to take the use of these classrooms. So virtual classroom definitely connects people and teachers can interact with their students in real time. So there is a live classroom that you are attending to and the teachers are able to attend to that in the real time scenario. Students can collaborate with peers and the system is still scalable to educate to an ever growing population. I mean, it can reach out to beyond the geographical locations to across the world, and we are not trying to here just limit the people as the digital immigrants. We can also connect to digital natives who may be able to replace their traditional classroom platforms. So a virtual classroom is an online space that stimulates a live classroom. Lessons are usually synchronized with the educator and the learners all appearing in the same online space in the real time. However, many virtual classrooms include pre-recorded lessons like the one that we are having now, where this session is a pre-recorded session, and it may require the educator or the learner to be connected to these pre-recorded sessions. Like real-world classrooms, virtual classrooms are flexible to the style and needs of all learners. So what does the virtual classroom need, or how does it look like, or what are the various types of virtual classrooms? The types of virtual classrooms can be seen in the screen now. Uh, Over the years, we have seen many different forms of virtual classrooms, and we have also attended our Google Meet sessions or the Zoom sessions or the video conferencing that keeps happening. So, in all these classrooms, we have seen that a video conferencing facilitates communication with both the teacher and the student, and there would be a digital whiteboard which helps them to connect or to clarify, or there is a collaborative effort that is happening. The participants are given an opportunity to raise their hands when they are needed to ask few questions, and there might be chat groups, and you can group have different groups and have sessions on that. But for our better understanding, we will start looking into what are the different types of virtual classrooms that we have. The first of the type that we want to look at is it creates an environment that creates everybody gives an opportunity to learn. It's flexible, and it helps the virtual classrooms to have a variety of both the form it is in, that is a real classroom situation, as well as the online technology that has interspersed the learning spaces to be more adequately enhancing for the learner. So the first type of classroom that we will look up is the enriched virtual classroom. What happens in an enriched virtual classroom? It's an enriched virtual program is one that is mostly taught online with occasional offline components to augment the lessons. So there is an online session that happens, and few offline sessions or few offline tools or resources are provided to help in additional understanding of the topic. In many cases, the in-person component takes the form of one-to-one meetings and with teachers or instructors, or it can be a face-to-face assistance and personal connection. So that's how the virtual classroom happens, where the enriched virtual, wherein there is an online component as well as an offline, which is just to add on to the augment the learning processes. The next we have is the rotation. The rotation model of virtual classroom combines virtual learning with live in-person lessons in a fixed schedule. So there is an in-person session which has a fixed schedule, and this schedule takes in place. It is typically reserved for single subject classes at higher levels, like high school or at university level. So the rotation model is generally looked up for single subject classes. The next is the fully online classroom. The name itself is very suggestive. That is, it is fully online. There is no there is no offline component to it. This classroom only exists on the basis of the internet availability, and it is real life version. In this type of an online learning, the virtual classrooms represents the only time students and teachers will interact with each other directly on a fully online asynchronous model. So there is a fully online asynchronous model of learning wherein the classroom is fully digital and there's an internet facility and they are all the time online. The flex model is the other type of the learning space where in a virtual classroom of a flex model is applied to distance learning, usually involves a virtual classroom that remains open and available for students to visit at their own time. Students are encouraged to work digitally on their own in smaller groups. The teacher will be available periodically, either online or in person, depending on the need or the nature of the course. So here it is available for smaller groups. Periodically, there is online and offline assistance depending upon the nature of the course. The flex model is especially popular in trying out to non-traditional learners that may not respond well in a traditional classroom. So the rigid structures of learning are avoided. It is more, flexibility is the kind of the notion that is associated with the flex model, where the flexibility is taken into consideration when we are talking about the flex model. The a la carte model is the next model, that is the choose and pick. You, by the name itself, a la carte, it means to pick and choose as per your own convenience. So an a la carte model is that which combines a variety of digital teaching methods or models, and multiple channels through which the child can learn. The mix and match nature of the virtual classrooms can be up to the person and or the institution running the course. So here there is a opportunity for pick and choose the right kind of combination or the right teaching models that will enable your learning process. So if you look at this, you can understand virtual classrooms are now in the process, and when we are talking about something that is come out to your doorstep, there is a variety of options that you have to that you can choose. These options are helping us because at times when we were hit by the pandemic, at times when the pandemic the learning never stopped. Learning kept growing, learning kept moving, learning kept progressing. And for the progress to happen, it is important that you are going to be connected to the learner. To being connected to the learner, virtual learning platforms or virtual learning classrooms are one way that you can stay connected, keep learning all the time. So if these are the things that we are talking about, then we should know why are virtual classrooms important, or what is the importance of a virtual classrooms. When you talk about virtual classrooms, if you see, it fills it it has a number of ticks. When we have to talk about the importance, you have a number of tick marks that will help you to understand, yes, virtual classrooms are important, and it is a new form that the education has been transcending all the boundaries and reaching out to the learners at their time, at their space, at the place that they want to be. So the three A's in learning, anytime, anywhere, and any place, to anyone, is being reached through the virtual classrooms. So it gives it addresses all the challenges that we were facing in a traditional classroom. And through technology, classrooms continue to evolve. If we were in with a PowerPoint presentation or just a video recording. Now we have animated videos. We have design model of classroom that is coming. We have a whiteboard. We are able to submit. We are able to share our opinions. We are able to uh, do a mind map, a virtual mind map, a virtual concept map. So many things have been evolving at that same time. There are learners who are able to connect to all these things at that same time. So the challenges of a traditional classroom or an in-person classroom is being addressed in a virtual classroom. So how do we look at a virtual classrooms in a supportive manner? So educators can supplement their existing classrooms with the virtual lessons that they have, especially in the form of a flipped manner. So if you have a flipped classroom, you are able to take that and you're able to support your classroom. So an offline and online model helps in assisting a virtual classroom. Virtual education methods promote inclusive learning. So when we are talking about inclusion as a prime aspect in the learning process, we are here to understand that no one is excluded. There is no segregation. We are speaking about including everyone in the learning scenario, in the learning system, and hence virtual classrooms become a very prominent aspect in promoting inclusion. And so, accessibility to students who are differently able or children with special needs are able to be getting this advantage of a virtual classroom. We extend the reach of the virtual classrooms to a wider community. We are not restricting to a limited community. We have moved beyond, we have extended it to a wider community, which is another aspect which also promotes a lot in virtual learning, because our resources are now going to be taken up across the learning domains, as well as the learning the learners who will benefit from our learning resources that they have. uh, Implementing a virtual learning classroom infrastructure, it maintains educational continuity. So once your systems are in place for a virtual learning, it is in place. It just continues to perform. The performance is continuous. No, no kind of, we are not restricted by any kind of, any kind of pandemic or any kind of uh, blockage or any kind of issues that will challenge the learning. With a proper connectivity and with a proper accessibility, we are able to continue the learning, uh, even if we are facing some kind of closures, a temporary closure in schools or colleges or educational institutions, but the learning platforms are always available for spreading the learning across the student community. So when we are talking about the advantages of a virtual learning classroom, we know with the ever-growing need of innovation in education, educators and institutions are ready with the solution today. They have seen the challenge, they have faced the challenge, and now they are ready with the solution. And virtual learning classroom is one solution that knocks the door of every learner or of every educator, that helps them to get connected and to reach to the wider community. This will inevitably mean increasing the availability of digital learning tools. So we need to be ready with the digital learning tools, including both distance learning tools, that is for virtual classrooms, and as well as for distance learning. And as they are going to as they are going to assess the needs of the students, we are going to be able to change the educational strategies, the educational learning resources, and the methodology to suit as per the virtual learning classrooms. So if in a traditional classroom, we have a specific setup of how the classroom has to be, the design or the layout of the classroom has to be. A virtual classroom, tries to move beyond the traditional classroom situation or a setup, and tries to move further and helps in reaching out to every student as a part of the learning community. So the challenges or the issues that we were facing in the traditional classrooms have now been surpassed in the virtual learning classrooms. There are few challenges also in a virtual learning classrooms, but when we are trying to understand the gap that the learner and the educator has, by taking a note what are the issues or challenges, we are able to bridge that gap. And hence we need to understand that by assessing the needs of the students, they will be at a better opportunity. Schools can take a better look at the systems which have to be maintained, which have to be kept in place to achieve the desired learning outcomes. So one of the advantages that we look up at a virtual classroom is high interactivity. We are talking about interactive classrooms. We are talking about students being engaged in the learning process. We need the learner to be a part of the learning process. We need the classroom to be a learner-centric classroom. Virtual classrooms helps in availing this facility of having higher interactivity. An effective virtual learning classroom will have a multiple communication channels. This would bring up instant messaging, voice chat, video conferencing, whiteboard facility, ideally, which will help the students to be a part of the learning process. They will no more be a passive learner, they will be an active learner, able to share their views when the teacher or the educator is at the forefront trying to explain. There are a lot of shared workspaces which will be given to the students, which will incorporate multiple engagement among the students and help them to look at the course materials which are provided to them and give a positive response in the learning scenario. The second advantage that we see is collaborative learning. As we are talking about multiple learning engagements, as we are talking about group effort, as we are talking about group work, collaborative learning really helps in bringing up the interactivity in the virtual classroom. They are able to collaborate on a given learning situation. They are able to bring in their ideas, merge their ideas, think about it, how they can take it further. And in a real life situation, they are able to work on the various aspects of learning. So through shared chats or shared files or digital whiteboards or concept maps, which are available on the digital platform, the collaborative effort by the students are being taken up, which is enhancing their learning opportunity, which is enhancing their learning understanding, the concept understanding. So students can work together on solving problems and reinforcing course materials. It also stimulates group work, breakout rooms, and allow students to work in pairs or in smaller groups to so that the physical space is avoided The you may face a challenge of physical space, but that is avoided when you are working as a small group in a breakout room or in a shared space that is provided to you on the digital platform. The next advantage that we have is the student-centered learning or the student-centered teaching. Learning and teaching goes hand in hand. And today, when we are talking about learning and teaching, we always think about teachers as lifelong learners and to incorporate or to engage the students in a learning situation which will be useful for them in their life. So we follow the principles of learning, which talks about principle of utility, principle of life-centeredness, principle of community-centeredness, and so many, and which brings in the learning domain to a very different level. One of the challenge of the digital learning, in fact, is the pre-recorded, sometimes the pre-recorded materials, which makes it more teacher-centric. So for that, when like a session like today, now what we are having, it could the listener may be feeling that, oh, there are so many points that I would like to ask the teacher who is now giving the session, but it is a pre-recorded one. So how can I get back to the teacher? So at that time, we can incorporate text, we can incorporate materials, we can incorporate resources along with the lessons, along with the pre-recorded text, pre-recorded sessions, which will give a deeper understanding for the students. So videos are convenient to teach at a point of time. They are sometimes difficult to comprehend because of the lack of clarity in certain concepts, but that can be avoided by giving them additional resources which will help them to understand the way the teacher wants to communicate. The questions can be posed or can be raised on the topics that the child finds it difficult to understand. This will enable the teacher to understand the learning gaps that the student is facing. So it can be a student centered when a virtual classroom, especially in a live classroom, has much more agility and responsiveness for in person. So what can be done in a virtual classroom is many a times we can have a virtual learning situation, pre-recorded sessions, and the digital learning resources can be provided as an additional method which will assist the learning process and help the learner to be more for a deeper understanding and clarity. Content variety is another aspect that we are looking forward in a virtual learning classroom. Just like an interactive whiteboard in the classroom, a virtual learning classroom can easily make a wide range of media to present. You can have a media, you can present it, you can review it, you can make necessary changes, you can have additional materials, educational materials to be given. So learning is not limited to to a classroom and the 30-minute or the 45-minute lecture that you are having. It is beyond that. It is giving an opportunity to go beyond. So there is an opportunity that we are discussing at this point of time. Apart from that, the additional resources, the additional references will help or augment the learning process. So there is an opportunity of the library being as a source of inspiration for the students to learn more on the concepts that are provided. Through links, through files, through embedded video, the teacher can tap a wider range of educational resources and content to make the learning more engaging and more fruitful. So we are addressing a wide spectrum of interest of the students and abilities through the variety of materials that we are providing to the students. This will enable their learning process. It is also a safe and a comfortable learning space. Virtual learning is not to be. We do have a lot of cyber issues or cyber crimes and cyber aspects that we need to look up when we are talking about virtual learning or any virtual, domain that we talk about. But definitely, it also becomes a safe and a comfortable learning space because you are monitored, and a classroom filled with warm and welcoming people is much better than an empty classroom or an automated. So you have a lot to do with the classrooms being more positive. It helps in the way that the is being made. You have a digital classroom wherein video and other resources are popping up, making the classroom to be very active and interactive, integrative classroom wherein the mentors and the peers have an open space to interact. with this kind of a learning exposure definitely makes and moves the child to learn better, to understand better, thus making the child to emulate the real life situation. uh, when we have all these as our classrooms, making our virtual classrooms to be more effective, how should you, as an educator, look up at your classroom? It is important that you should see how my classroom should be or what my classroom should have. So let's look into what your classroom should have when you plan to start with having a virtual classroom. So, how should your classroom? Certain functions are just necessary, and you should have that so that your classrooms or a virtual classroom will work. It is important to have some kind of mechanisms that help you to check how your virtual teaching can be more robust and it can reach to the learner. So, what your classroom should have, or what a virtual classroom should have? One is the first one is messaging. This is the bare minimum form of communication of messaging, where the learner and the teacher are able to interact with each other at a point of time where they can understand, share their views, look into the aspects that is needed, and take it forward. So, students should be able to write freely directly to the instructor, to the educator, and ask questions, participate, collaborate, share ideas, and in some contexts they can also have a digital text which can be shared by the student for more clarification. So messaging is one aspect that the student should have in your virtual classroom. Voice chat is another aspect that your student should be given an opportunity, wherein a voice is faster to reach than the text. Maybe when the teacher is busy teaching in the classroom, you would have put a text, but the teacher is not able to look at the text. But at the same time, if you can just raise your hand and put up your questions through a voice chat, that reaches faster than the teacher looking at the chat. So chat is another and a faster means of communicating in a normal learning situation, and it is very much in relevance to your traditional classroom where you could raise your hand and ask your questions. That could be one. Certain times you can raise your hand and ask your questions with your video on, so that it helps the person, the teacher or the educator, to know who is the one who's posing that question. Where the connectivity is at a dimmer version or not very effective, you can at least ask that question by putting your video off. Video streaming is another aspect that can augment or help your virtual classroom. It is how it's about as close as being an educator. The teacher is literally there in front of you, so going getting the teaching in person. So a video streaming is also possible where you can directly or in live stream the video. It's Most students will not be able to broadcast themselves under this system, but it will help in deeper and smoother online experience. File sharing, like I mentioned earlier, file sharing is another important aspect which will help the communication to go on more strong. There can be a common document that can be referred to while we are referring to the concept or that we are learning today. And at that point of time, the file sharing can be two-way, because when I'm sharing a file, at the same time, if my student comes up with any topic which is relevant to the topic, the student also has the opportunity to share the file, which means that any kind of clarity that needs to be picked up can be done at that point of time itself. It also acts as a storage bank for learning resources. So file sharing helps in the virtual classroom. Uh, they also can submit their work, which will be used for assessment later. So file sharing is another option which will help in assessment. The next that we have is participation management, wherein talks about, it refers to the student's ability to raise their hands or to participate in the learning process. It can be the student wants to share something, it can be the student wants to ask something, or has some kind of a clarity that needs to be taken up on a particular point. So it offers the students for input of responses, for review, for answering questions. It can be also for a overall message that has to be spread across to all the students. So they can have this kind of a channel to communicate to the educator when they are learning. A digital whiteboard is another important aspect that you can have in your classroom, wherein in the digital whiteboard, It allows for writing, drawing, calculation, tabulation, so many things, a concept map. And this can be, again, a two-way process where it can help the teacher to mention or to be the person who starts with it, who kickstarts the whole learning process, then allows the students group wise to communicate and put their thoughts on certain topics, which will again help them to brainstorm on a lot of things, bring it together, bring their thoughts together, and put it across. Student groups, that is the breakout groups or smaller groups for collaborative learning, is another aspect that your classroom should have, which will help them to work as individual components earlier, come back to the groups together, share their views, disintegrate again, go back in individual, come back, be a part of another group. All this grouping, group work will just help the collaborative learning and social learning to be more enhanced. When you are having all this as an aspect of learning process, of a virtual learning process, that's when you can imagine how learning can be or how learning is looked up at. So you can imagine a world where learning happens not just in schools, not just in classrooms, but as a live event. So today when we are sitting here, learning is happening in a live event. I am in my space, you are in your space, you are doing a couple of other things which you might have moved out now, and now you're listening to me, you're paying attention, you are learning. You are not in a formal classroom, you are not in a rigid timetable, you are learning at your own space, at your own time, at your own convenience, thus making, learning to be more fruitful while traveling, while moving around, while you're exploring. Learning is at your own safety and at your own comfort in your own learning space. So, a virtual classroom is an ideal way to get real connection in a real time situation, in a real time world. And yet another toolbox which will really meet the needs of the learner. As an educator, our duty, our responsibility is to meet the needs of our learners, wherever they are, whichever learning space they are right now in, to reach up to them. And if we need to reach up to them, it is important that we look that our learning tools or the digital tools that we are using in our learning process is apt for them. For that, we need to assess the learners, the learning needs first. You need to understand your learner, assess their learning needs, give them a provision to give them the resources or the tools or the modules that will suit their learning needs. And when you have this, the learning outcomes that you have decided for your students, for your class, will be surely achieved. So, a virtual classroom is somewhere where you really take your classroom to a different level of a learning experience, thus creating a very motivating and enriching learning. So, I hope you have enjoyed this session. You have enjoyed this talk on learning. Thank you for listening, and you can have a wonderful learning, virtual learning experience ahead. Thank you so much. Have a nice